Welcome back. In this video, we'll wrap everything up. I lied. I said the last one was going to be the last video, but I ran out of time. All right, we're almost done though. This one will be quick. So we have this second section we've already duplicated, but we need to change the image out and also swap the order there. And that will be nice and easy because we don't have to worry about any of these order classes anymore, because this is the order we want. The text is already first, so we don't have to do any rearranging of it. So let's come over to my code and find what we're working with. So this is the second row. What we're going to do, we can get rid of this order stuff entirely and take this and just move it after the text row. So just move it down here and then change the image. So instead of milk, the next one I believe is called gumball. Let's check. Okay. And then we still need to remove the order classes from up here as well. I only did it from one place. And now the order is restored to our world. This is looking exactly how we want it to look. We have the image on the right this time, text on the left. Cool. Next, we can take this row again and just duplicate it. So take that entire thing. We want the first one because that one already has the order switching, and it's exactly what we want. We just need to swap the image. We don't have to change anything else. So where do you end? Right here. And then we'll paste that in. Cool. And the name of this image, instead of milk, I think it was sprinkles. Double check. Is it working? Awesome. Other than that, one thing I did change is on the extra small size, I wanted more space here. If you notice, I added some margin in. Compare that to our version. It's all cramped on the bottom. So I should have done this before we duplicated everything. Poor planning on my end. But we can go find the divs that have the text inside of them. So all of that is right here, basically. Let's find the first one up top. So this one right here. And we can just give it some margin bottom, like margin bottom 5. We can start with that. Let's see how that looks. This will be on the first one. So where are you? Right here. But we don't always want there to be margin bottom 5. Because it looks okay, but then here we're adding in unnecessary margin bottom and it's not centered anymore. If you compare it like to this one, which is centered close, or it's closer to being centered, this one has that extra margin bottom. So we're going to get rid of that margin bottom at some point. So let's say margin bottom 5 and then margin bottom at medium is 0. So removing it. And I'm going to copy that over to each one of these. Just the 3 bits of text that we have, the 3 sections. And so now they stack with, when they are stacked on small and extra small, we get that extra space. So things aren't running right up against one another. And it looks better, in my opinion. But once we expand it out, it goes away and we don't have all that extra margin down here. Next, let's get to work on the navbar scrolling effect. So this part doesn't really take advantage of anything we've learned so far. It's just to make it look a little cooler, in my opinion. What we're going to do is in our CSS, we're going to define a class that is going to be applied when we scroll. So really all that we're doing is giving it a background color. So we're going to make a class that says background color is that purple shade. Then through JavaScript, we're going to detect when the user has scrolled and we're going to apply that class to the navbar. So let's define the class first in our CSS. I'll call it scrolled. So let's do that. Let's do it towards the bottom before the media queries. And I'll say navbar, when it has the scrolled class on it, we're going to give it a background color. And the background is, let's see, what color was it? For some reason, I have this one in RGB values. I don't know why, but it's 222. This is annoying to do while trying to type 192222. We could also convert that to hex. And we're going to save. Then we're going to go to my index.html, and I'm just going to add my JavaScript at the bottom rather than a separate script file because there's not very much to add, and because we haven't really talked about JavaScript. So I'm going to make a script which looks like this, and I can type code inside of here. And if you want to copy and paste this, it might be easiest. I'm just going to type something first. It looks kind of crazy if you don't know JavaScript. And then inside of this, I'm going to say document.scroll. So this code says when there is a scroll event. When something is scrolled, or when the page scrolls, we're going to check the nav. So we're going to select the nav. So if we look at our nav, how could we specifically pull it out? Well, we could give it an ID, like main navbar. Let's use that. So we'll say $nav is just a name for a variable. Again, don't worry about any of this if it's confusing you. And I'm going to select based off of an ID called main nav. So now I'm going to say toggle class on that nav, toggle class called scrolled. That's the name of the class we defined over here, scrolled. But when do we want to toggle it? When, this is kind of crazy, but this dot scroll top is greater than the nav, $nav dot height. There's a lot going on there if you don't know JavaScript, but I am finding the nav bar, finding this bar, and saying anytime the page scrolls, we're going to check if the top of that scroll is greater than the nav height. So basically, once we scroll past the height of the nav, which is, I don't know how many pixels that is, let's say 50 pixels maybe. Once we scroll 50 pixels, then we're going to toggle the class scrolled. But then once we scroll back and we are less than the height, remove that class. So this is JavaScript and jQuery together. All these $signs, things like scroll, things like toggle class, that comes from jQuery. But I don't want to bog us down with JavaScript. What we'll need to do well, we can test this and see if it works. We'll see. Okay, we're not quite there. Now I believe what's actually happening is that if I do scroll and we inspect our nav bar, where are you? Main nav, right here. That's why we called it main nav bar. And I was referring to it as main nav. So main nav bar. All right, let's try again. There we go, it's working. Cool. So one thing you might notice though, this is a very sudden transition. It's just appearing versus the original version fades in a little bit. So we can do that really easily using CSS. We don't need any JavaScript. So we're done with the JavaScript. For some of you, it might have been easiest just to copy and paste that. But up here in our scrolled class right here, navbar scrolled, we can say transition on the background. And if you're not familiar with transitions, this just means when the background property changes, which it is changing right here, we want it to take however many milliseconds. We could say 500 milliseconds, which is longer than what I actually ended up going with, but you can see it takes half a second now. We could even make it a lot longer. You can also use seconds if you do 1s. So now it takes a full second, which that's not too bad. The one I went with in the original is 200 milliseconds, but you might actually prefer something longer. I'm not positive what I like the best. Let's go with 500 milliseconds. Let's see how that looks. Half a second. Yeah, there we go. It makes it look deliberate enough, but it's not so painfully slow. And with that, we're basically done. One thing on the solution that is different, I did add some space at the bottom. If we want the space, we can just add some margin bottom. So where we're actually applying the margin, where are you? Margin top. We could do margin bottom, 100 pixels too on each one of those sections. And now we have both top and bottom margin. So we get this extra space. Cool. All right, so that is the Museum of Candy website. It's, I guess it took a little while to make. Although when you think about it, in terms of how long all those videos add up to, it's maybe, an hour to make this? And we could probably do it a lot faster if we weren't explaining everything as we went. So it's pretty simple, but it doesn't look very bootstrapped, in my opinion. But it takes advantage of things like the Flexbox utilities, the grid system. We nested the grid, and nice colors, great photos, in my opinion, coming from Unsplash. Really great website. Thanks to the photographers who post their work there. I recommend you check it out if you haven't. We use it later in this course again. Really great resource. Anyway, talk to you later. Bye.